Hello and welcome to Blockchain Gaming World with me, John Jordan. So in this video, I thought I'd take a quick look at what's going on in the world of Polkadot and gaming, because there's been a few things that have been happening. I don't know that they're necessarily significant in and of themselves, but there's been a few kind of things building up. So I thought it might be good to have a quick video to sort of do a very brief overview. I've not done a lot of research into this, but anyway, here goes. So the thing that kind of caught my attention was this. So this is a game called PolkaWar. It's raised $400,000 from a few kind of early stage investors. Obviously, two of them are part of the Polkadot kind of ecosystem, Polka Bridge and China Polka. Personally, I don't really know a vast amount about sort of Polkadot. I know technically how it works, yeah, to some degree at least. And it is, I guess, a different sort of blockchain compared to things like Ethereum or Flow or things like that, in the sense that it is this kind of building out to this idea that you have kind of a core blockchain, in this case kind of called Polkadot, that sort of runs base level kind of services, obviously kind of consensus and that sort of stuff. And then you have a whole bunch of other chains, which generally in this case are called parachains. That I'm not going to go into all the detail, but you have other sort of other blockchains that link into the Polkadot kind of main core chain. And those might be individual blockchains with multiple products running on them. They may be a blockchain for just an individual project, so potentially a game, if it's big enough, would just run on its own chain within the Polkadot community. And the idea is these are sort of networks of blockchains. And I guess we all kind of think over time, whether that's 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years, blockchains will, by their definition, start to talk to each other. Already we see lots of bridging between, obviously, things like Ethereum and kind of Polygon, or Ethereum and Binance Smart Chain. Those are very simple to do because they all run with the same underlying sort of technology. But in the future, it doesn't really matter what blockchain is doing or what it's running consensus-wise. We'll be able to talk. The blockchains will be able to talk to each other. That sort of makes sense. Obviously, it's not just Polkadot doing this. Cosmos as well has a kind of broadly similar approach, although obviously different in terms of the kind of technical specificities. Anyway. So Polkadot is. We haven't really heard much about gaming on Polkadot. At least I haven't. We haven't really heard a lot about anything on Polkadot, really. It's still, the main net's sort of live, and they're sort of starting to get to the first stage of these other sort of parachains starting to go live, and there's this whole kind of auctioning process that goes on, and we're starting to see that sort of kicking off. So I guess that will be what's happening in 2021. There'll be quite a lot of visibility around Polkadot, and I guess gaming will come into that. So I think people now seem to understand that DeFi is great, it raises a lot of money. But if you want to go sort of mass market with millions of users, you're probably going to go for gaming first as a sort of a obvious sort of stepping off point. So I think that's why there's a lot of focus from these new blockchains on gaming now. So anyway, PolkaWar itself, I don't think interests me very much as a game. It is a sort of NFT based fighting game. It's sort of, I'm sure it has its own peculiarities or specialties, but basically you own NFTs, and it is a sort of RPG, and it is a sort of fantasy kind of RPG where you own characters and you own gear and you go around kind of fighting things. So it's interesting they've got this money. So obviously $400,000 isn't very much to get a proper game up and running these days. So we'll see how they get on. This was $400,000 was in a private sale of their token. They're going to do also what they're calling an initial decentralized offering, an IDO, on different launch pads. So if you want to buy tokens in this PolkaWar game, they'll be raising more money, and you can actually buy the sort of underlying tokens for that. So that's all fine. PolkaWar.com is the URL if you want to check that out. But this sort of leads me into a few other things that are going on with Polkadot. I'd sort of even had forgotten this. So it's only a few months ago, really. Enjin, well known in the Ethereum space, been around since 2016, 2017. Technically very good. Built out a sort of gaming platform for blockchain games. There are actually, quite a number of games on there. None of those games I think are particularly interesting for me at the moment, but that's not to say stuff won't launch on there. That will be interesting at some point. I think at the moment the problem for Enjin is they were sort of too early with technology, because people who wanted to make blockchain games and knew what they were doing sort of just did it themselves, and people who didn't know what they were doing maybe went to Enjin to provide that, but then they weren't really well funded, and so those games are not necessarily as interesting as other games. Personal opinion now. Anyway, Enjin has raised $19 million. That's a fairly large chunk of money to launch an NFT blockchain on Polkadot. So this is sort of what I was talking about before. This is Enjin is going to run its own blockchain on Polkadot. So effectively, one of these para chains will be run by Enjin, probably a version of its own technology. So it has its own various technologies. One of which is JumpNet, which is a sort of a scaling solution for Ethereum. So potentially, I guess they're going to do a version of that. and they're going to be just running NFTs on Polkadot. So yeah, that sort of makes sense. That's the sort of the Ethereum way of doing things. You don't worry too much about all the game logic, but you just have your NFT kind of ownership and transfer and marketplaces running on the blockchain. So we're interested to see how that goes on, because I think Enjin, as I say, technically are very good, and I think with something like Polkadot, which not many game developers are probably interested in or have the technical expertise to do, that might make Enjin's kind of middleware a bit more exciting for people who want to get on Polkadot but don't want to do all the sort of research themselves. And I think when you get to situations where when it was just Ethereum, then people could sort of learn themselves, and that was kind of part of the skill of game developers, was to learn how to code Solidity and deploy onto Ethereum. Now when we have like a dozen fairly good blockchains that people could be deploying on, then middleware becomes important, then, because you don't want to learn how to write on Flow and Nia and Harmony and Hedera Hashgraph and all these other ones. If there's a solution that can sort of take that pain out, and you sort of write once and deploy in multiple places, that's sort of valuable for developers. So this is interesting. We're definitely keeping an eye on Enjin and how they get on with their Polkadot chain. And the final one that's been bubbling under for a while is Everdream Soft. So Everdream Soft have been around since 2016. They released the first blockchain mobile game, Spells of Genesis, in 2017. Still going. It was sort of running on a sort of old sort of Bitcoin blockchain or version of Bitcoin called Counterparty, and then they sort of switched to Ethereum. But that was sort of by the time the gas fees were expensive. So it's never really had a decent blockchain to run off the back of, to be honest. The game's okay. I think as a mobile game, I played it quite a lot. Sort of like a marble kind of popping sort of game. But they also are into Polkadot. So in this particular case, they're doing the I never pronounce this right, Kusama. So Kusama is what they call a kind of sister chain to Polkadot. It's not quite a test net, but it is like a proper deployable blockchain. But its security is not so expensive to run on Kusama as it is to Polkadot. Polkadot, you have to stake a lot of DOT tokens to get your parachain, and it's quite an undertaking. And you get a very high level of security for that reason. But obviously, not all blockchain products need a very high level of security, and like an enterprise level of security or a DeFi level of security, because they've got billions of dollars in them. Games, care more about kind of throughput and scaling. Not that security isn't important, but it isn't the most important thing. So the idea with Kusama is that certain developers who might just want to deploy quickly without so much investment, and just see how the kind of Polkadot kind of system works, they can deploy on this and sort of get a feeling and get ahead of the curve maybe. So this is what's going on here. And Everdreamsoft have been developing this NFT stuff for Kusama for a while. So they're actually they're sort of working with the Kusama Foundation, I guess. I think they've got some funding for that, so they're working on this sort of low-level sort of coding to get this stuff kind of up and running. So again, it shows, I think, sort of behind the scenes a little bit that stuff is happening for Polkadot. I mean, nothing as far as I've seen is deploying yet in terms of games, but we are starting to see the kind of the infrastructure for sort of NFTs. I guess NFTs are sort of everywhere now, but NFTs specifically for games, and we're also seeing these sort of bigger pieces coming into play in terms of kind of Enjin and their middleware. So it'll be interesting to see, maybe more of a 2020 thing, 2022 thing, sorry, than a 2021 thing for Polkadot. And I think deploying a chain like that is much more complex than deploying a chain like even Ethereum 2, which is pretty complicated. So we'll see how that plays out. Anyway, thanks for watching. This is Blockchain Gaming World. Keeping our eye, and I always get it wrong, our ears to the ground and our eyes to the sky or something. Keeping track of what's going on with blockchain games anyway, and there is an awful lot. So hopefully you find this stuff useful. Please subscribe if you do. But thanks for watching this video, and see you again.